Hi everyone, and hello to Tanya. Today's guest is Tanya Selvaratnam. I've already actually had a discussion with her before, but if you guys don't know who she is a writer, she's an artist, she's Emmy nominated and a multiple winning Webby producer with more than 25 years of experience in the arts and in social justice. I think I got you down, Tanya.
Oh my gosh, I'm blushing. First of all, thank you, Zozi, for all your activism on gender-based violence.
Thank you.
I admire you so much, and it's important during these challenging and unprecedented times to remember the issues that are, in fact, in many cases worse because of the pandemic, and one of those issues is domestic violence and gender-based violence. As for how to spot if you're in an abusive relationship, it's very important to remember that abuse takes many forms. It's not just physical, it's also psychological and emotional. It is digital abuse, it is legal abuse, and it's also financial abuse. And if anyone thinks that they might be in an abusive relationship, really the first avenue is to tell someone and get help. And if you know someone who's in an abusive relationship, you could be their lifeline by reaching out to them and saying, "Are you okay?"
What are those signs, and what can we look up?
There are so many manifestations of abuse, and some of the hallmarks of abusive behavior are jealousy and possessiveness, controlling behavior, isolation, blame and incessant criticism, which can also be referred to as gaslighting, the dual personality, the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, abusive and violent sex, and if the violence can't be taken out against the partner, then against objects, against the children, against animals. So those are 7 very insidious signs of abusive behavior. And they all manifest in very different ways that might not be so easy to spot right away.
You mentioned a lot of things, but I just want to get examples because some people might not understand certain things. And I think one of the interesting ones that you mentioned is possessiveness. Possessiveness and jealousy together might sometimes come across because it's been romanticized so much. And, people might find it endearing, but there's a fine line.
Jealousy and possessiveness, often, as you say, can be quite endearing at first, because you think, oh, my partner is so devoted to me. Oh, he can't be without me. He's paying so much attention to me. But that jealousy and possessiveness can start to have very dark manifestations. For example, it can be constant texting and calling to see where you are, what you're doing. It can be showing up randomly at where you work. And in some extreme examples, it can be monitoring your movements. Some abusers, and I've had this happen to friends of mine, are even monitored digitally. These are very, very scary manifestations of jealousy and possessiveness.
I hope that you guys can spot that and can actually see, that fine line, like I said. You mentioned something else, the Jekyll and Hyde. I don't think I've ever heard that before. And what is that about? What are examples of that?
Well, I think for many people who've been in abusive relationships, hearing Dr. Jekyll and Hyde instantly clicks. Often victims are questioned, why would they stay in a relationship that is abusive? And in many of those relationships, it's because the abuser is not always abusive. There are times when the abuser is the most adoring, kind, gentle, generous partner. And the victim can hold on to those moments as reasons to stay. But when you're in an abusive relationship with a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, you don't know which person you're going to get. And if you get the violent version of that person, you could be in danger.
You also mentioned controlling behavior, which again, I think is quite linked to that possessiveness and that jealousy. Again, could also be endearing, because you think somebody cares for you and every step that you do. So what are the examples to actually pinpoint that, this is controlling behavior and I'm actually being abused here?
I can speak about my own personal experience It was being controlling of what I ate, both from a weight perspective and also from a type of food perspective. You know, I was with somebody who didn't want me to eat meat and sweets. And it's baffling to me to consider that I let that happen, but you also don't want to upset your partner. So controlling what you eat, controlling who you spend time with, you know, criticizing your friends. In my case, it was calling my friends ditzes and clueless, even though they were educated, successful, independent women. It is controlling what you dress. You know, we think it's flattering sometimes when our partners want us to dress a certain way, wear a certain thing. We want to look good for our partners. But in some cases, these can be extreme attempts to control you and to make you feel that the way you normally want to be is not a way that is appealing to your partner.
Okay, so Tanya and I have spoken about the 7 signs to identify whether or not you are in an abusive relationship or if somebody you know is in an abusive relationship. So what we're going to be doing now is actually taking the next steps of what do you do now that you have identified the 7 steps.
Document what is happening. Include dates and correlate them with things like email exchanges and photos.
Tell someone, ideally more than one person. These are usually the people that you trust the most.
Figure out whom you can speak with who will know what to do. And by this I mean an expert, a lawyer, a counselor, the National Domestic Violence Hotline.
Know that you are not alone and that you are not crazy. It's okay to feel traumatized. That is very normal. But please never ever feel ashamed.
If your partner is not willing to acknowledge the problem and get professional help, get away.
Don't worry about your abuser. Focus on yourself.
You are the most important part of this equation.
Tanya, thank you once again so much for joining me today and always just being this, well of wisdom, and thank you for your voice and your activism. More voices like yours truly are needed in the world. Now, before you leave, is there any final remarks, anything that you want to leave the people who are listening with?
People know that there are resources out there to help them. One place to refer to is the National Domestic Violence Hotline. The hotline number is 1-800-799-SAFE. So I'm really excited, Zozi and the Miss Universe organization, that you've given this opportunity to talk about this very urgent issue that has become even more urgent, and hopefully this will help others and stop the cycle.